Hi guys, welcome to Advanced Colorizations. For this first lesson I'm just going to cover a little bit about technique and a little bit about skin tone. I will move on to things like hair and makeup, eye colour, and sort of different techniques for doing those in later lessons, but I'm going to try and keep each lesson under 10 minutes long. So first of all, we're just going to look at skin tone. I'm sure you already each have your own techniques of doing things, but some of this will be translatable to different areas, and hopefully at least part of it you'll find useful. And it's always useful to learn different techniques, because sometimes you'll find that even though you have a tried and tested method, there's one that works better for you, or gets a different result, or whatever. Anyway, let's start. I've got this black and white image here. As you can see, it's pretty big. I would always recommend... Ooh, this is exciting. It does this sometimes, so bear with me. We might get a black screen in a moment. Oh, yeah, there we go. This is fun. Don't worry. But anyway, back on with the lesson. It's always better to start with a large image and then shrink it down when you've finished colorizing, because then if there are any little mistakes, they become a lot less visible when you shrink your image. So that I would recommend if you ever get a chance to. Now, there are various different ways of colorizing skin. The easiest, I imagine, is to just pick a colour that approximates skin tone. That's probably a bit too red. Possibly a bit too... Never mind. Let's try this. And then make a new layer. Fill it in completely with this colour. There we go. I'm going to zoom out a little bit while I'm doing this. Set it to colour. Now, doesn't look great, to be honest. It's definitely a bit too yellow, and it doesn't really give you a sort of natural look to it. I think there are other ways that just sort of look a lot more natural. This looks a bit alarming, if we're honest. Now, you can go to the internet. Let's find a picture of a model. First one that sprung to mind. Let's take this picture of her. Not a very high quality one, but it doesn't really matter, because all we're going to do is lift that colour, sort of a mid-tone from her skin. Let's take that one, and we'll turn our colour layer back on, and this time we'll fill it in with the colour we've picked. It looks a bit more natural, but not really. So this isn't a technique I would really recommend. You can get it to work. I have seen it work, but let's try another. I would always advise, though, to pick colours from images already. If you know who the model is that you're using, you can find pictures of them and use the eyedropper tool, which is here in Photoshop, to lift out the colour from the original image, and then it will just be a lot more natural than you trying to do it by eyesight. Because would I have picked that colour? No, probably not. It's not so much applicable with skin tone, but when it comes to doing hair, makeup less so, because you can sort of make up whatever colour you want for that. makeup, anyway. But eyes, clothing sometimes can end up a little funky looking, but especially sort of parts of the body, so hair and eyes mainly. Anyway, second technique, and this is the technique I always learned when I first learned how to do colorizations. This is what I did, was go to colour balance, and then I think take the reds up to about 100% and the yellows down to 60 is the optimum. 60 off doesn't really matter, but as I'm being pedantic, might as well do that. Now, I just think that looks a whole heap more natural than this. There isn't really a huge amount of difference between the two, but if I sort of turn this on and off again, you can see how playing with colour balance affects the different tones in the skin differently. So sort of the lighter areas don't get so full of colour, if that makes sense. Whereas if I turn the colour layer on, then we get very, very orangey hues in the paler bits of the skin. And that's my real problem with using colour. When you do set things to blend modes, I would always recommend to use something like overlay or soft light. It does alter the luminosity of the image, so you may end up making, say we're using soft light to do her lipstick or her blusher or whatever, it will alter the luminosity, make her lips darker, make her cheeks darker, but generally I find it just works better with tones. You know when you get hair dye that says, you know, we pick up your hair's natural highlights, so it's not like you just get a blanket colour that looks completely unnatural. That's kind of what we're doing with colorizations, if that makes any sense. We want to work with the tones in the skin and the image that are already there, and either sort of bring them out, or maybe this metaphor doesn't work. Anyway, moving on. Hopefully you've got the gist of what I'm saying at any rate. So that's that for colour balance. Another way of doing it is using selective colour. Now there's no point fiddling with any of these because we don't have any colours in the image, so go straight to neutrals and play here. Now as you can see already, there are just different tones in the image because we're playing neutrals, not the other areas. There is still sort of grey. It looks kind of blue in comparison to the yellow that we just put in. If we pull the reds up a bit now with the whites and make those yellower, slightly a little bit redder, not much redder. Could even try making them cyan, but I won't get into that just yet. I do think it's important to bring blue tones into the skin, but I'll cover that either later on in this lesson or another lesson. It's something you need to worry about in finishing touches rather than right now. Now, black tones, we can make those yellow. I don't really want to make them blue right now. Let's make them redder. Now don't worry with this technique about washing out the darker areas of colour, because we're not going to keep this luminosity, we're going to preserve the luminosity of the original image. Now I think that looks colour-wise about right. Obviously if I turn it off you can see we've regained some of the detail that we lost in the darker areas with that red washing it out. We want to try setting this to different blend modes. Colour, perhaps. Ooh, these things won't work. I think going up to soft light or overlay might be a good idea. Now this looks incredibly greyed out, so it's possibly worth bringing those tones up a bit more, making them more obvious, and then with the white tones I think it might make more sense actually to leave that on colour, not that. Let's bring it down to about here. And you've already got, you see, ooh, Chris Headland is online. The different sort of tones in the skin already. You've got these bands of orange, and then it's sort of a redder colour here. And again, the paler parts of the skin look a little bit bluer. It doesn't look natural right now, but we'd fiddle with that later on. But the thing is, skin isn't all one colour. If we bring back our little picture of Angelina Jolie, even if she's a bit sort of pixelated, you can see there's sort of a grey tone around here, or a greyer tone. The shadows do look a bit greyer, and then there is sort of like bands of her skin sort of around the edges where it starts getting darker that look more orange, and then the very pale parts actually look ever so slightly pinky. And if I get my eyedropper, if you just